I want to start small before I get into some of the bigger shit. So, uh,
Kvetch. Kvetch.
I'm between two things, but I'll start with this one. Okay, so sports teams that consistently get obvious biased treatment from either the refs or leagues or whatever. Okay.
Are we talking about Patrick Mahomes and the Lakers right now? Is that
Those were two of the three on the list of sports teams that I had.
Let's do it.
And I brought this up first because there is a Lakers yarmulke sitting right next to me. But the most obvious example everyone points to is I think it was 2002, the Western Conference semifinals between Lakers and Trailblazers back when Rasheed was on that team. It might have been a little earlier. I don't know the exact year, but it was, I think, like 4-1 free throws, Lakers to Trailblazers, and they were a much more talented team. I had a lot of all-stars, and I don't know. There was just, they're a small market team. So it gets to maybe why, the league might prefer Lakers. Obviously, they have a huge fan base, and they'll get more TV revenue with them advancing as opposed to a tiny little city like Portland. But, I think consistently, like when you look back at like the list of NBA champions, it's basically Lakers, Celtics back and forth, and little teams sprinkled in here and there. Luckily, the Pistons have had a few as a fan of them. But when I watch games like that, the most recent game I watched where it was just so obvious was, so I'm a Manchester City fan, as you know, but the team that's the equivalent of the Lakers in European soccer is Real Madrid.
Mm-hmm.
And we were playing them, and every single little 50-50 call, whether it's just a foul on the field or a more serious yellow card or even a ball out of bounds for a throw-in, always went to them every single time. And it doesn't matter if they're home or away, like they just get those calls. And yes, they have at times the best roster. And I think right now, probably top to bottom, they have the best roster. So they are a very good team. But there are other times where clearly they can be outplayed, but they just get the right calls. And I feel like so much of modern sports has been to reduce that sort of bias, like this natural human bias that might happen just if you're at if you're a referee and the home crowd screaming at you, you might just naturally give them a favorable call. But with these, video reviews and replays and VAR, which is like video assistant referees and stuff like that. But even then, if it's close, they just give it to the favorite team.
Well, yeah, as we have a friend, Sir Bobbington Tangslot,
Mm-hmm.
and he says stars get the calls.
Yeah.
And I think that's true.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it at the individual player level in the NBA, absolutely, that'll happen. If you're not a superstar, you're not going to get the same level of treatment from the referees, but and the league in general. So that pisses me off entirely, and I feel like I've gotten to a little bit of the acceptance stage with that. I'm just like, okay, we know they're going to get these calls, and you just have to even increase your level of play that much higher to overcome that. But getting to your second point about why that is, it's truly because these are entertainment leagues. They're here to make money and to get viewership and fans in the seats. And these are the clubs or teams that do that. So if you can tip the scales a little bit in their favor, it's easy to do.
Well, you're assuming that it's true that they actually get the calls and that you're maybe not just biased towards some one way or another.
Yeah, but I think if you, like the most obvious example for us lately being the Kansas City Chiefs, I ask any average NFL fan, unless you're a KC fan, like you're going to say, yeah, Mahomes gets calls that others don't.
Yeah.
Brady was like that when it was the Patriots, for sure. I mean, they changed rules for him when he got hurt. You can't hit a quarterback below the knee now because Brady got hurt, and they don't want that because he brings in too many fans. So
that's fair.
Now you can barely even fucking touch a quarterback. I mean, some of these roughing the passing calls, the lack of holding calls, the PIs. I mean, I don't watch the NFL as closely as I used to, but when I see the compilations of missed calls, it's insane. And to me, it's too competitive, all these leagues, for like one team to keep getting to the final or the Super Bowl or whatever consistently, unless you get help. And I think partly that's what's happening.
That last thing is interesting, that I think you're right that these leagues are getting so much more competitive, and that would make it much less likely that these stars would get the calls, that the big teams would always win.
Because there's stars on a lot of teams. Like, it's more spread out. Yeah.
Exactly. But a star on the Lakers is much more valuable than a star on, the Pistons, right?
Sure.
And I don't necessarily agree with my take that I usually, like my stance that I usually go by, but I feel like I'm so often the devil's advocate, as you know, and you even said it, that these leagues are for entertainment.
Yeah. And
at that point, it doesn't matter like whether it's true or false. It doesn't matter whether it's
conspiracy or if it's just chance or whatever, not even happening at all.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like, these leagues aren't there to find like the best of the best.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually interesting because the Olympics are so much more competitive than you would think. You would think that the Olympics would be like overarchingly just USA. Well, sorry, for basketball.
Okay.
In particular. Yeah. You'd think that the USA basketball team would just like dominate.
Yeah.
But they don't. So I wonder if that is a testament to the stars get the calls theme.
You're saying the imbalance in an Olympic sport should be even greater, but yet that's still competitive. So when you go back to the NBA where it's even more parity, you wouldn't expect the same teams to keep winning, but they do.
Yeah. And maybe it's just a matter of the fact that if you have 5 superstars on a basketball team, it doesn't necessarily translate to the best basketball team. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's why it's more competitive.
It's part of it.
It's just an interesting comparison, I guess.
Yeah.
So you understand why that. Well, let's say we assume that the stars get the calls.
Mm-hmm. You've never watched a Laker game where you're like, oh fuck.
See, as a Laker fan, I can remember. I don't remember specific examples, but I remember the feeling of, oh, I think we got that call because we're the Lakers, or I think I remember that. I was like, oh man, that doesn't feel good getting that call. So let's assume that they actually do.
Okay. I didn't do research. I mean, I didn't have that much time last night.
Even if you did research, I don't think they would publish the.
No, I'm sure there's some analyst nerd who looked at
probably
like free throws per team and over decades and decided, okay, these squads get on average more calls than others, which shouldn't be the case.
That's fair. Although statistics can be misleading a little bit, but even though you'd think numbers would be the most trustful thing.
I get it. So we're assuming it's the case. We explain why it's entertainment league. How do we solve it?
Actually, first, my first question is, do you think we should solve it? Do you think it actually, like...
As a fan of mid-market, small market teams, yes.
Yeah.
I realize I mentioned Man City, but like they're also they don't have the biggest fan base compared to...
Well, they're newly the GOAT, or they're newly great.
Right. So as a Detroit sports fan, I think there should be a change. And I think the leagues have all tried to implement stuff, like I said, replay and VAR and coaches challenges and stuff like that to make it more fair. And I'm sure that helped eliminate the most egregious examples of bias from referees or whatever. But going beyond that, because I still think there's a problem, maybe you need like a truly independent person. Like, I don't know, like the people who get assigned these jobs, like, do you know their background? Are they gambling on the side? Like,
there are gambling instances,
right?
right?
Like they need to be like so clean cut. And I think one thing that could help is
Computers.
well, yeah, I mean, that's part of it. I mean, that's what VAR was trying to do is they use technology to say, okay, if it's a goal or not, like the referee will get buzzed based on like a radar on the pole that'll say, okay, the ball fully crossed or whatever. But for other things that's more subjective, like a holding or something like that, it's tough. But like if you pay the referees more, I think you reduce the risk that they're going to be gambling on the side. You don't eliminate it, but maybe you reduce it. And then also if you apply, analytics to how they've been doing, like can you go back and look at, an umpire in a baseball game? Do they call more strikes for X team versus another?
You find the bad actors.
Right. You use data to find a bias, whether it's subconscious or not. And you give them a warning and say, if you don't fix this, you're out.
Well, you're assuming that the league doesn't want the bad actors.
Right. Right. But I think if it's more transparent about what this information is, and like if even for sports gamblers, if they knew going in, like, hey, this guy calls more holding calls for the Chiefs than any other referee, I think that, would influence a lot in terms of that end of it. But
sports gamblers probably already do know that.
They probably,
we know some sports gamblers and they like, oh man, it's this ref. And,
in soccer, for sure, they will bring up before the game, like, this referee has called more penalty kicks for Manchester United or Liverpool or whoever, a big team, than any other referee or whatever. So like they'll call it out, but the question is there consequences for it? And I don't think that there is, right, as of right now, unless you get truly exposed, like the Donaghy guy for gambling.
Do you think? Well, it's an interesting thing you brought up about paying them more. Which is a similar argument to paying government employees more, senators, people who have a lot of power over how the world runs.
To reduce corruption, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like paying them more, but then saying they can't
be a lobbyist or
buy stocks.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Do you think the Lakers pay for better treatment, or do you think they just get it?
I think they just get it. I mean, I think the minute you do transactions, it's easier to expose. There was examples of Juventus, like the biggest team in Italy, that got relegated for doing that. They were paying referees and
really, and their uniform looks like a referee.
It does, yeah, exactly. Maybe that was the insider hint, but yeah, they got exposed. So it's too risky. I think the league in general wants that, like this Luka trade, right?
Yeah.
The fact that guy, as a person who negotiates professionally, the fact that they didn't shop the Mavs, I'm talking about, didn't shop him around to other teams, and it was just a surprise.
Something fishy.
He just ends up on the Lakers. It's like
it's the Pau Gasol trade.
But there have been times where the league will nix trades, like they'll veto. Trade. Right.
Yeah.
Was that to the Lakers?
Yeah.
So like that's one strange example where they decided to step in, but
maybe they were atoning for their sin
a little bit, trying to go back, too hard on being unbiased. But yeah, the fact that happens, I think, is a little. The Luka trade, I think, is another example of like the big teams getting some preference. If they were trading him to the Pelicans, is that even a team anymore? The Pelicans,
of course.
Okay,
how dare you?
Yeah, I think the league would be like, wait a second, this doesn't look right, and they would.
That's actually true. What if they traded? Okay, you have top 3 player in the league going to what is maybe a bottom 3 like market in the league. I mean, nothing wrong with New Orleans, but
it's the fucking Pelicans.
Yeah, it's the Pelicans. I feel like it would be bad for the league.
It would. Yeah. Less viewership.
Yeah. So in my, like, I don't know if I can kvetch with you about this topic, because I don't actually watch sports for the competition. I watch it for the storylines. And
wait, what do you mean?
Like the narrative around the league. Like I think sports are important. obviously, like, watching the game and, seeing the best players in the world play against each other is important. But actually, is it important? No, I don't think what, like,
The human drama of it is what you care more about?
Yeah, I care about the human drama. I care about
That's why people watch reality TV.
well, yeah, so that I watch, actually, I don't watch sports. I follow sports.
Oh.
I follow sports because I think it's like I don't know, if a microcosm of life. It's not comical, but it's like a fictional representation of like real life, where you have these different, someone behaves a certain way on their team. Like Kobe was, an asshole to his teammates because he worked hard, blah, blah, blah. And like, I feel like you can apply that to the rest of your life, where it's like, oh, like, do I want to be the Kobe or do I want to be the Shaq? Right. Do I want to be like fun? Although I heard some weird things about Shaq recently. Or do I want to be like the guy who's just like a killer,
Yeah.
And so I follow sports because it's an interesting narrative. It's a way to show, it's a way to set examples for people in life. And I think that's why the sports leagues are interesting to me. And that's why maybe I don't care as much about the competitiveness of the league. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, but I think that makes you less of a true fan. Like if the narrative, if at least in my perspective, if the narrative is better for the Celtics and they're playing the Lakers in the final, like they have more drama going on, Kyrie's being weird and going, back when he played with them, or saying the earth is flat and the rest of the teammates are like, what the fuck? And like, is that you're like kind of in a weird way rooting for them just to like, because it's more interesting? And then let's say there's a bunch of Tim Duncans on the Lakers, a guy who's just a human, a robot player, who's nothing going on.
I'm conflicted because as a fellow Tim, I find I wish I could root for Tim Duncan, but he's so boring. He's one of the most boring players in history.
Watch a compilation of Tim Duncan highlights.
His layups, his passes, bounce passes,
his bank shots from 12 feet. It's brutal.
Yeah. I would root for the better story. I think I would root for, I would root for Lakers Celtics over Mavs versus whoever,
Sure.
And so I understand that most people wouldn't like that take, but
no, I mean, I get it. I think it's common. I think a lot of casual fans who don't have like a true attachment to a team will do that. But I think going back to my complaint, I think that it helps get to a resolution, which is if you have, which is happening organically, which is more sports gambling being allowed, more fantasy sports, which is kind of another form of gambling, but like
it's definitely gambling.
Yeah. Considering our side bets for sure. I think it helps a fan not just be focused on the big market teams because you have a random fantasy player on, the Vikings or whatever.
That's true.
And so it gets more parity and interest, and therefore the league is less likely to favor the big market teams, knowing that, in week 15, the Jaguars Vikings game might get just as much viewership because there's a lot of good fantasy players or whatever. So I think that helps this bias gap that might be happening.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to think that the gambling aspect, like the sort of alternative engagements into the sport, would help with parity in some way.
It helps from the fans' perspective, which helps the league, but then does it also corrupt the referees who, because there's more money flushed in there, be more tempted no matter what you're paying them to get involved. So this is just something that it's very obvious to me. I watch the games, I see it. Maybe other people disagree, but I feel like it's out there.
Yeah.
This bias, and it pisses me off. But
do you think there's a way to change it?
Like I said, I mean, fantasy's helping, the gambling might be helping, might be hurting, might be helping, and then being more analytical about the referees and offering more transparency on how they've called games, and adding more technology, whether it's this is a touchdown because there's a chip in the ball that tells you it hit the goal line.
Yeah.
Like that should be very simple.
I think the technology aspect is the thing that would actually remove the bias.
As long as it's quick, because my God, like watching a challenge and seeing 5 replays of the ball, like just tweaking like 5 degrees right when the guy hits the ground. Like it's so boring.
Not only do you see the replays, you also see a video of the referee looking at the replay in the little monitor.
And he's waiting for the league to tell him, what do I do?
Yeah. Oh, Lakers. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's one. Do you want to go with the next one? I have a couple more, but
things to complain about?
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm gonna pee. I need to text Deep. I was supposed to have a call with him, but I'm gonna postpone it until like a little later. Yeah, I'm gonna